You're welcome back to our conversation segment where we speak with our guest tonight, Dr. Nonko Mantula. And of course, on the 26th of June 2025, the European Council adopted conclusions in which it condemned Russia's continued hybrid campaign, including sabotage, disruption of critical infrastructure, and cyber attacks, foreign information manipulation and interference, and attempts to undermine democracy, including the electoral process. The European Council underlined that it would make full use of all means available, including the EU hybrid, the cyber diplomacy, and the FIMI toolboxes to specifically prevent, deter, and respond to Russia's hybrid threats. The EU restrictive measures in view of Russia's destabilizing activities now apply to 47 individuals and 15 entities. Those designated are subject to an asset freeze, and the provision of funds or economic resources directly or indirectly to them or for their benefits is prohibited. In addition, natural persons will also be subject to a travel ban, which will prevent them from entering or transiting through the EU territories. Well, joining us now is Dr. Nonko Mantula, and she's a journalist and, of course, the co-chairperson of the BRICS Journalists Association. Good evening, Dr. Nonko, and welcome to Afia TV tonight.
Good evening, and thank you very much for having me.
Good. So give us a build-up of the events that have eventually led to this ban.
There's been quite a lot of events that have happened. We have seen a lot of misinformation or disinformation coming from Europe, and I think it's also supported by some of the actions that have come from the USA, because there's been a huge move from media that is not Western prone, but media from Africa, media from the global South, media from countries like Russia that has stood up to start telling stories that are based on what is happening on the ground. And obviously this has upset the European Union and its council. And this is where we find ourselves as of the 15th of July, especially for us as journalists who are from BRICS countries. Under the BRICS Journalists Association, we have now been sanctioned as an association. This makes up the 15 associations or entities that have been sanctioned, and 47 in total individuals who are under the European Union, under the FIMI that you initially have described as information, foreign information manipulation and interference, which has no basis. So for now, we have not been given facts as to which information was being peddled incorrectly. However, one thing we do know for sure is that it's not something we are going to let lying, because it speaks against freedom of speech for those who are journalists and media practitioners.
Right. So when we spoke about this earlier, when I was in Russia, we spoke about this, and you told me that there's been a response to that threat by the EU from the association. Can you tell us more about it? And then speaking about freedom of speech, I was talking to someone yesterday and I said, well, I think generally in the world, there's freedom of speech, but freedom after speech is never guaranteed. That again boils down to your point. Go ahead and tell us about the response from the association, please.
So on the 15th of July, this is when we had these sanctions slapped on us. One of our director, Ivan Melanikov, was also put on the individuals list. However, this particular sanction, we did not take lying down. What we have done is that through our director, Ivan Melanikov, based in Moscow, we sent through a letter to the European Union, who then have still not responded. So we are pursuing them for a response, because we want to understand if they are willing to sound a clarion call to the EU around the rights and the premises where journalists are protected in. And they haven't responded as yet, because UNESCO, the UN, they've, including even the African Union, on the soil that we live on, Nigeria and South Africa, has also got enshrined in it is the Windhoek Declaration that states explicitly that journalists need to be protected. Freedom of speech must be afforded. But this is not what has been happening, right? And then subsequent to that, we have engaged with international lawyers who are going to assist us. We're not going to take this one lying down, because it hampers and hinders on the right of movement for journalists, on the right to go and investigate stories, on the right to report and have that freedom of speech, which UN, UNESCO, and African Union, and I'm sure even the European Union has it as well. You're correct when you say freedom of speech is there in this day and age, but are you going to be free after you have said what you needed to say? Well, I will tell you for certain, I was nervous having to travel outside of Africa, transiting in certain countries, because I too, being a co-chairperson of the BRICS Journalists Association, could be intercepted to say, why are you traveling in territories that you don't need to be in because of these sanctions? So we're not taking it lying down. We are going to make sure that we have our day in court in the European Union's Court of Justice.
I find it very amusing when you're saying now that the response, you haven't gotten no response from the EU, after the threats that they've given yet. So, but tell me, what's the next step that the association is considering, especially as regards the travel ban across the EU territories? And yes, I was really afraid for you as well, because when I saw that people have had to have travel bans, it's one to be, nervous for.
Yeah. So the EU obviously is not going to respond. We have not even attempted to engage with them. When they give you sanctions, it's sanctions. The only way to respond to them is to take it to the European Union's Court of Justice, of which that's the process we are going to follow now. But it is the UN that we are concerned about. I mean, yes, the UN, we do understand that it does not have jurisdiction on the EU to tell them or prescribe what they should do, but they should be speaking out to say freedom of speech enshrines A, B, C, and D, and these are the policies. EU countries are member states of the United Nations, so why not speak up at least in protection of journalists? Now, some of the things that are very worrying, Amazing Grace, is that the people who are individuals, or even the entities, those entities bear individuals. There's no entity or organization that has no individuals. So we are all at risk of not only being arrested or apprehended if we are found in European Union territories, but we are also at risk of having any work or any money being cut from us. And one such person who is an individual, who's an African, but has a Swedish residence, is Natalia Yam, who has been put on that list as an individual, and she can no longer go to her property in Switzerland. So is that fair? No, it's definitely not fair. And where's the proof of why these sanctions have come on, and why such blanket statements? If you look at their actual prescripts as to why these sanctions have been put on, they have not been explicit in outlining what the offenses have been. So it's a bit of a catch-22. The more freedom we seem to be getting, the more we seem to be stifled, we seem to be hampered, and they do not want. And when I say they, I'm very clearly saying the European Union's Council does not want the voices of the Global South to be heard, because once our voices are heard, it will become a threat to the work that they have been doing in our continents, in our countries, of undermining our laws, undermining our people, and exploiting our resources, exploiting our people. So when we start bringing this to the forefront, it becomes an embarrassment to them, and they'll need to be accountable.
I'm going to put you on the spot now, Dr. Nonko. I'm sure you're not expecting this, but tomorrow will be a very big day in the United States of America. President Trump is already expecting a lot of the EU leaders to be gathered there. What's your, take on that? What do you think this is going to be for Russia? And of course, I just need your opinion as a journalist,
The more and more there's a huge move towards multipolarism, we are seeing a push against it from the West. And we do know that the superpowers of the West are not only the United States, but also countries within the EU, including France. And when they are pushing against what is happening in the Global South, multipolarism, they are pushing for unipolarism, which has not worked for the world. If it had worked, we would not have so many countries that are unequal. Now, this gathering is going to be another gathering of powerful currency leaders. But if you ask yourself, where do their currency powers come from? Where do their resources come from? Definitely not their own shores. They've been exploiting for many years. So whatever it is that they're going to be discussing is obviously, one, a threat. And the threats have been outlined by Donald Trump himself, saying that BRICS countries, should they come up and self-determine and have their own currency, then he will make sure that he stops it at any cost. He has said this. So what they'll be discussing is obviously the global South threat. And I believe that it's also going to look at BRICS very closely. It's going to look at more sanctions upon sanctions. And for us, we shouldn't be fearing this meeting that's going to happen tomorrow. I don't think we should be fearing it. What we should be doing is continuing to expose the ills that have been done by the imperial masters and continuing to tell our own stories for self-determination, and then start uniting amongst ourselves as the global South and start working together so that we don't have to rely on them anymore. So this meeting is neither here, neither there.
Mm-hmm. I very well agree with you on uniting as a front together as the global South. We have to let you go now because you have work to do early this morning. Thank you so much for your time and for sacrificing your sleep. Dr. Nonko Mantula, thank you so much for speaking to us tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's all we have tonight on the news right here on Afia TV News. Follow us on all our social media platforms at Afia TV Official. And on behalf of the entire production team, I am Amazing Grace Ajayi. Thank you so much for watching and good night.